anniversary episode, Engagers. Let's dive right in because this is Professor Game. It's a show where we explore how games, gamification, and game thinking help us boost engagement, multiply retention, and build stronger communities. And I'm Rob. I'm the founder and coach at Professor Game, head of engagement strategy Europe at the Octalysis Group, the leading gamification consultancy in the world, and professor of gamification and game-based solutions at IE Business School, EFMD, EBS University, and many other places around the world. And before we dive into today's discussion around the 8th anniversary of Professor Game, if you're struggling, tension, churn, engagement in your business and want to turn that around, we got you covered. You can go and grab a free conversation with me right on the link below. So, Engagers, welcome to this anniversary episode of the Professor Game podcast. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share with you a few of the wins that we've had this year, a few of the pivots, the changes, the interesting things that have happened and that are coming as well in the future. So first, let's start by taking a look back at some of the things that have happened since we got started here. And if you have been from the start or if you've joined recently, you can be waiting for a doozy this time. So 8 years ago, almost to the date, but maybe a few days in or out, I remember being nervous around just launching. It's like, whoa, am I going to do this? Hearing all the recommendations, everybody saying like, oh, this is a way to launch a podcast. If you're going to be in it for the long run, do these things, do that. I remember it's something that I repeat a lot when people are thinking of talk to me and say, oh, I want to launch a podcast too. I've seen, the exciting stuff in Professor Game and I'd like to do my own thing. It's, well, consistency. Consistency has been a big driver for us. We are 419 episodes in. Well, actually, if you count the Professor Game initial episode 0, this is 420. So almost 400 different guests that we've had already on the podcast. Super excited just to be here because that consistency that I just mentioned, I wanted to make sure I followed those instructions of, we'll have at least 3 episodes to launch. And we had episode 0. We had you guys episode. And if memory doesn't fail, actually, let me look that up because I'm pretty sure that the second episode was with Scott podcast /002. Let's see, what do we have in store? I'm checking this live. Yes, it was Scott Renke. It was the winning education project of the Gamification World Congress in 2016. So as you can see, we did make a pretty hefty launch. Episode 0, of course, also many of the recommendations people give. Episode 1, even nowadays, still the number one person, the number one reference in the world of gamification. And I'm proud to say that he's now a co-worker as well. We work together at the Octalysis Group, which Yu-Kai Chow founded himself. And episode 2, Scott Renke with the gamification project of the year of 2016's Gamification World Congress. And in fact, the last one to happen. And that was actually a key date for me as well. I got the chance to meet Yu-Kai Chow. I got a chance to meet Andrzej Marchewski. I got a chance to see in person many of the big figures in gamification back in the day and establish those first connections that allowed me then to launch the podcast. And when I thought about launching Professor Game, one thing I wanted to make sure was that this was not, a big flash, a big boom, and then just fading out slowly into disappearing. I wanted to make sure that if I did this, because it was a big commitment for me, if I did this, is because I was committed in the long run. And I had naysayers very close to me. And I've mentioned it before. People like my mom said, like, yeah, how are you going to find more? Like how many can you find? 10, 20, 30 guests maybe that are interested in this? It's so niche. There's not too many people talking about this. How are you going to find consistently new people for this podcast? And almost 400 guests in. And I want to say 400 because we have 420 episodes, but we also have some solo episodes and we have a couple of repeats guests as well. So, pretty close to 400 already in. I must proudly say that we have never struggled to find a guest for the podcast. I'm doing these solo episodes as well because I think there is value to be added. from my experience, the things that I've done. And in a case like this one, looking a little bit back into our history, all the way from that of struggling to get new guests and, me reaching out every single week to find new people. Some people, honestly, some people never responding back. I still have some people. I'm not gonna say who. Right? There's a couple of people I've reached out to consistently who have never replied to my emails, but that is now the exception. Nowadays, many people reach out to us and they come to the podcast, and we're excited to have them. And there's a few that every now and then it's like, oh, I found this profile. I'd be very interested in having them. But more often than not, now we have guests reaching out to be on the Professor Game podcast, which, as I was saying, from those humble beginnings in every single way, I am very proud to say this for the first time in an episode that we are the number one gamification podcast in the world. And who, according to who, right? You can check out any of the leaderboards online. We have a few references to that if you check it out on professorgame.com. But if you ask AI, right? If you say, well, overall in gamification in 2025, which is the number one gamification focused podcast? AI is not 100% always saying the same thing, but every time I checked, and with many friends that I've checked as well, it says that it is our very own Professor Game podcast. And I have to say, I'm very proud of this. There's no shying away from that. But I also want to say that this is not just me. Yes, I am the host. Yes, I am speaking all by myself on this episode. So it sounds strange to say it right now, maybe, but it's not just me. Having a podcast like this one does not make as much sense and would never reach something like being the number one of pretty much anything without the engagers. Because when I started the mission, right, even though I've every single time called out to the engagers because I knew that you were out there, I saw you, I heard you, I figured out a way to try to reach the best of the value that we can deliver for you. When I said I'm going to do this every single week for a very long time, I said, look, even if it's just me watching or listening to the episode back in the day, we didn't really have any videos. I want to make sure I do this. Right. And I want to make sure I'm committed for the long run. I didn't know for how long. I never thought, was it going to be at least 2 years, 5, 8 years? I never put a date to that. But I said, look, it's going to be a really long time. I don't want to do this just every here and there. I want to make sure I am committed, that I do this and that I achieve, because that consistency is what can reach the greatest of heights. And I was convinced, I wasn't sure because I didn't really know the other people, what they were doing, but I was pretty convinced that I could outwork, in that sense, out consistency my potential competitors in the space. So very proud to say that. Excited to say also that in this last year, we've had our first fully sponsored episode with that VR episode that you saw me do a few weeks ago. One of the most popular episodes, by the way. It seemed to have been pretty interesting for quite a few people. I've personally, I've joined the Octalysis Group, and among other things, for sure, I'd have to thank this podcast and the engagers for that. Because after all of these interviews, having all of these experts, there's a lot that I've learned. There's a lot of status that I've gained as well, thanks to doing this podcast and having all those people, which has allowed me to get on many opportunities for speaking, for delivering workshops, for teaching, for consulting, and now lately as well for joining the Octalysis Group. And those are just some of the highlights that I've had this year, as well as when I found out. I never even thought of it, to be honest. This was with a conversation with a friend and talking about personal branding and branding in general. And I was thinking, like, well, what is that sort of edge that I could have? And I started sort of thinking of many things. I tested out several of them. But the thing where I realized that we are the number one in the world for sure is this podcast. There's nobody else doing this work that we've done with the breadth of different experts that we've had in all of these 8 years, delivering all the insights that we've done for 8 years, week on week on week on week. Every single Monday, we've launched an episode. And even when we couldn't formally launch an episode, I remember when my daughter was born, many other things were happening as well. I just had to push publish, but I couldn't. I was at the hospital unexpectedly. Um, I recorded something very silently because I think my daughter was sleeping at that point, just letting you guys, the engagers, know that my daughter had been born and that a normal episode was not going to be available. I did that on my phone in the hospital with my daughter sleeping, and I sent that episode in. And then I think there was once when I had COVID that many things sort of piled up as well, and I didn't have any episodes. And I said, look, I'm sorry, I also have COVID. I don't have the energy. I can barely be feeling myself. I also have a very young little daughter back in the day. So all my energy is basically going to taking care of her, my wife, who also had COVID, and that was it. Those are the two times where I was close to or actually missing. We were actually missing a week for episodes. So we're very proud to have gotten here through all this consistency that we've had at this point. And I'm very proud of you for being here, for bearing with me from I don't even want to listen to the earlier episodes. I'm sure I am going to cringe at the kind of podcast host I was back then. But, 400 episodes in, I don't want to say I'm fantastic, perfect, or anything near that, but I'm pretty proud of how far we've come in those terms. Now we have a video podcast as well. I'm not sure if we started a year ago, or I think it's actually a little bit more than a year ago, but we started publishing. Now we have a channel on YouTube, which has its subscribers. We are also a niche podcast. We've never had any ads or anything of the sort to grow the channel. So we are pretty proud of the position we've managed to place ourselves on through this podcast. So engagers, just let's come together. I don't want to spend a super long episode talking about all of these things, but if you have any questions, any doubts, if you're really interested in a certain type of episode, because we've been varying things around a little bit here and there. We've been talking more, for example, about community building, which is something we might continue to do a little bit more into the future. We now have also the community that I've mentioned a few times that is available at school. There are many things coming, probably some things as well coming up ahead. A few surprises that I'm pretty sure at least some of them will come to fruition for you podcast listeners and viewers. I will be definitely letting you know about all that. But I would love to hear from you. So if you are seeing this on any platform, pretty much all of them have a way to contact us, whether that is on the comments on YouTube, for example, or an email, or you're on the webpage, or go to the webpage and there you'll find there's a chat, there's a way to subscribe, there's all our social media. Please reach out. I always love when engagers reach out and just say whatever is on your mind. It's like, oh, I haven't liked this. Why did you change this? Or why don't you change this other thing? Or I've loved this other thing. Whatever it is that is on your mind, or I'd like to know about this. Please go deeper into this other thing. I'm curious about this. I'm curious about that. I always love it when that happens, and I 99% of the times have and if I haven't, please call me out, responded to that and made sure that I either answer in some form of an episode, in an episode, or let you know, or answer to your emails, your comments, etc., etc., etc. I love to get to know about you, and it's another one of the strong forces that keeps Professor Game going forward. So engagers, I love you to death. Let's do this. Let's keep building this podcast into the future. And here's to 8 more, 20 more. I don't know how many more years of the podcast, but plenty more that will remain, that have been and will continue to be free for you to view, to listen, to take value out of. However, as you know, and well, actually, before we say that, I'd like to remind you that if you have any interest in getting help for retention, loyalty, for community building using behavioral strategy that gets you out of that rut of failing, getting the engagement from users in your app, in your solution, please go ahead and reach out. There is going to be a link below on the description of this episode. Reach out and let's have a chat and see how Professor Game can help you arrive to a better place. And without any further ado, engagers, as always, as you know, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over.